we actually got to talk about classes now.
They're really, really interesting.
So we released one video.
Yes.
About choosing main that I think people liked. We were able to do it without it being a tier list, and it's a video about how tier lists are bad, and people seem to be happy about it. Okay, I will say tier lists are bad asterisks, because I know the boys at the channel who are doing tier lists. I'm not talking about their tier lists because they are about fun. And we always made a point of doing that in the past too. We would be like, what is good for fun? But all those like power tier lists, it's all bullshit. So people seem to appreciate that, kind of like, okay, right. So really the most powerful thing is kind of like my level of skill over time compounding. Therefore, if I want to do well, I should pick something I think is cool and just become a master of it instead of always like, trend chasing. Because you often see the flavor of the month spec. If you look at the candlestick,
Yeah.
a little candlestick graph, you always see it has a humongous range because people try to go flavor of the month and can't really play it. So people seem to appreciate that. Like, I kind of want a situation where you can just like regularly do class content. Or I remember Preach, he had a series of, it was just like kind of coaching in a way. It was like really engaging, but not that many people watched it. Or the lore video we did today, which like that will have cost like well over £1,000 to make. And definitely will make a lot less than that. But that's like the type of content that, you do a piece of breaking news and it gets like triple the views, does way better, isn't made at a loss, which is important when it's paying for people's wages. But at the other end of it, you don't really feel any different, right? Because it's just like, it's a news cycle. We went through the motions.
Yeah.
Whereas
it's not part of a legacy you want to leave.
Yeah, and I guess it's like thinking about the lore video that came out today, thinking about, like, honestly, it's just thinking about doing class content the way that you were talking about it in a way where, it's not necessarily, here's the tier list of power for this patch, like the very, fast, like junk food version of that content. Yeah. Which it's like, I only say that in terms of like, it's kind of marketing and stuff. For a lot of people who do actually want to push and want to do really well, it is obviously important and of very significant value that they can work out what specs literally will perform the best. Like, I'm not saying that to dunk on them. That is a very important thing. And you'd hope that by pointing that out, that can also give Blizzard a useful signal when it comes to how they balance the game. But I guess just thinking about like that more intrinsic content, there's that fucking Bail Modan video that I've wanted to make for like 5 years and haven't got around to. But I guess I'm just like trying to chart out how things are more evergreen and, whole. I don't know. Actually, you know what it is? What made me think about that? I was thinking about doing the Legion class series.
Yeah.
Way back, because that was the time like, everyone was having a great time. And the class series, there was definitely a few times where I stressed myself out because I was doing the class series, it was just me and Connell. So from the gameplay side and the writing side and the recording side, like that was all me. And there was times I set very silly deadlines on myself, which was totally my own fault. But just that thing of like, cool, for the next 3 weeks or 2 weeks, like my little project is I'm, going to go learn this thing and kind of go through it. And it's like, oh, what's that? Something that was like a multi-week project instead of responding to the thing. Even the times we've done like the more documentary-like content as well, like Time is Money. I'm just thinking of like how we get to that stuff that's maybe, I don't know, like a bit more important. I don't know how I would classify it in my head, but
I understand what you mean.
Something I'm trying to get towards.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. It's the idea of it at least serves a little bit more of a purpose in terms of how people engage with it. Where it's the same thing where it's like to communicate an experience is in fact, this is going to sound like such a load of fucking wank. But to communicate an experience is effectively what the purpose of art is, right? Is here's an experience, here's a thing. And that's where you can communicate an experience through content like this in a way that's interesting. I mean, you look at, I think the peak of World of Warcraft content for me is always going to be Barney and Pint.
Yeah.
Their videos are utterly sublime in terms of here's an experience. And they're obviously massive endeavors and extremely good, but there's like a version of those is like, here's an experience that can be shared in like, not necessarily like an ambition for people to go to or aspirational, but in the sense of, hey, here's something that if people watch it, they will come away and go, I think I can have a 0.0001% improved life now. Even if that is, that's a class I think is really interesting. And you've genuinely went into the depth of it. Now I understand the depth of it. Now I can play it. And stuff like that. Or, that's a way for people to spend their time that's like, that was good. That was meaningful. Which is obviously different from being like, productive. So I think people have this really weird sort of brain damage now where they go, what am I going to watch on platform? I need to be, the only things I'm allowed to watch are things that are productive. So I watch nothing but people talk about how to game the stock market and how to make loads of money in my crypto coins and, how to be better at all these things. The only thing I am allowed to consume is educational. I think people fall into that trap. But there's obviously like, and this is something I'm feeling pretty strongly after playing like a lot of Harvestella. I'm like, a lot of this is just video game loop that's really enjoyable, like to vibe around in. But there's also like the writing of that game is full of really meaningful, like small, emotionally led stories. And like, I feel like I've had, obviously it's not a real one, it's a mimicry because that's what art is, a mimicry of experience. Like, I've had a mimicry of experience where I kind of feel quite strongly like that's really fucking good. That's like meaningful. And it's like, you can do that in content form. It's obviously not as serious as like a big sort of philosophical exploration like Endwalker is as a video game, but it's more like, hey, here's what it's like to play Rogue done in a way that people go, I enjoyed watching that. Maybe I'll play a Rogue.
Yeah.
Or I understand Rogue now. That's cool.
Like here's the example. I look at Blizzard with their the new series with Nosdormu.
Yeah.
What's its title again? It's not Afterlives. That was the Shadowlands one. Legacies. And it's just called Legacies Chapter 1. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not called, it's not called massive. It's not called Massive Balls James Bond Explosion Come 17 Nosdormu's Ripped. It's not called that.
It's not.
It's just called thingy Chapter 1.
Yeah, it's not called He Tried to Dominate Azeroth and Rule All Caps Lock Wrathion Dragons of Warcraft.
And here's the problem. That video was initially called Wrathion Dragons of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Utter, like that video's, if we were judging it via views, that video that so far people seem to say is the best one we've ever made. If we were judging that by views, like we would just have to say it's an utter failure. Our bargain with that is that people will be willing to support content that is, like that, right? So that's like kind of okay, but it was just interesting. It was interesting. So you'd rather just be able to say like World of Warcraft, or Dragonflight Rogue, and have some way of making that feel like really big and cool. Like, oh fuck, this video is like a little event on the experience of Rogue. I guess capturing 10,000 hours of Mage. Obviously, different format, you can do that, etc.
I mean, that's exactly it. That's literally like 10,000 hours of Mage. That's a sublime human experience.
Yeah,
in an artful way that really communicates experience. Beautiful.
Lich Elf said, Barney and Pint, like they remind me why I play the game, or it was something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, yeah.
That's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah, so I honestly would watch Massive Balls James Bond Explosion Come 17 Nosdormu's Ripped, though. I mean, sure.
Who wouldn't?
I would be curious at the very least.
That's got like that. Well, outside of the word "common," outside of balls and cum, it's very, very Elsa and Spider-Man-esque titling, where it's just absolutely crazy, mad AI, nonsensical, zero context bullshit. God. Also, I think after today, we're gonna have some interesting out of context clips available.
Oh yeah.